Hey, what's up, everybody? It is time for the much anticipated Bethany Funke's statement analysis. So I'm analyzing her November 13th, 2022 interview, just like we did Dylan's the same day. I'm really excited to go through it. So let's go ahead and jump into it and start watching the interview, and then we'll jump into the analysis, okay? And by the way, shout out to Outcast. We're going to be watching Outcast. I know I got some peeps from the Outcast channel, so we're going to be watching their video of this. Shout out to them. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here.
Okay. All I want to do is try and get an idea of what you heard, what you saw, and any timeline, any information that you can give us so that we can try and figure out what happened, okay? So just take a deep breath for me. I know this isn't going to be easy. And we'll kind of go from there, okay? Can I get your name? What's your first name? What's your middle initial? And your last name? And your date of birth?
2003.
And you live there at 1122 King Road?
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to start there. Let's go ahead and jump over to the analysis and make sure y'all can see this. Okay. So this again is Bethany Funke's interview with Sergeant Dustin Blaker on November 13th, 2022. So just a little bit of housekeeping real quick. I had someone send me a transcript of this interview. I used it here, but I have made some changes to it. And there's a couple things we're going to be talking about when it comes to redactions from this video. As far as I know, this is the least redacted video that I could find. If there are better videos that are less redacted, I'm going to be really frustrated about that. So hopefully that's the case still. Okay, so and this time I'm actually going to share all my analysis. So my analysis is in green. So let's go over it. The analyst, which is me, is presupposing that the subject is innocent. The subject is Bethany. And the subject is innocent and has no guilty knowledge of the deaths of the 4 victims in the Idaho 4 case. Okay. So we're coming at this from that presupposition. The analyst will be looking for indications that support this presupposition and will be surprised if confronted with anything to the contrary. So said another way, I'm going to begin with the presupposition that the subject is innocent, that she has no guilty knowledge regarding the deaths of the Idaho 4 victims, and I will allow the subject to confirm my presupposition or allow the subject to prove my presupposition wrong. Allow her to talk me out of that presupposition. I am going to allow her words to guide me, and if she cannot say it, I will not say it for her. Okay, so the analyst does have knowledge of the case. So I have knowledge of the case. I've analyzed the 911 call, Dylan Mortensen's November 13th police station interview and has some background knowledge of the case at this point. I've heard quite a bit now. Okay. So truly objective and truly unbiased analysis is very difficult, may even be impossible to achieve at this point for myself. So I'm just throwing that out there, being honest. I'm a pretty objective guy. I can take a side and stick to it and be consistent. I'm pretty good at that. So I'm going to do my best. But for the purposes of this analysis, the only allowed knowledge to be included in the analysis, the only thing I'm allowing myself to know is number one, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves, I believe is how you say their names. The Idaho 4 are deceased. Okay. So that's something I do know coming into this. Number two, the Idaho 4 died sometime between the night of November 12th and the morning of November 13th. Number three, the address where all 4 victims were found is 1122 King Street, Moscow, Idaho. And number 4, Bethany Funke, the subject, and Dylan Mortensen lived at the relevant Moscow residence at the time of the Idaho 4 murders. Okay. So we have the sergeant here. If you could, take a deep breath for me. I understand this is stressful. Okay. Just this is what I want to do. And we have an So is an informal yes. It's not yes. It's not yeah. Okay. Is informal. Might even be, it's considered maybe even immature. In a case like this, in a situation like this, I know I've seen courtroom situations. It seems like to me that requiring yeses or nos, clear communication is extremely important. It seems like that would be required. So I just don't like that uhs and mhms are allowed to be used. Okay. Now, does that typically happen? I can't say that for sure. I'm not a law enforcement. I'm not in law enforcement. I'm not a detective. I'm not even a professional statement analyst. So, but just from my perspective, I don't think that should be accepted. I think that law enforcement should require, hey, I'm going to need a yes or no from you. A yeah, something like that. Okay. So, uhs can indicate a lack of willingness to just say yes. Okay. Willingness to say yeah. So, it's something we're going to see quite a bit of here in this statement. So, anyway, so just take a deep breath for me. I know this isn't going to be easy. We'll kind of go from there. Subject says, okay, asks for her information, specifically, first name, middle, last name. Okay. So we are noting here that the sergeant has asked for first, middle, and last name and date of birth. So this is something to keep in mind as we listen to how the subject introduces others into the statement. Okay. So just kind of keep that in mind. Here we have, okay, and you live there at 1122 King Road, which is the place where the Idaho 4 have died. Yep. Okay. Yep is also an informal yes. It's not a yes, and it's not a yeah. It's informal. So don't necessarily love to see that. She's in Nevada. Do you have your phone here with you? This is another informal yes. So what we're going to do is take phones for a little while, and that kind of thing. So I'm skipping ahead. We're gonna look into this a little bit, and then we're going to start getting into the meat and potatoes. So let's jump back over before I forget.
What's the phone number for you? And what state you're in?
Nevada.
Do you have your phone here with you? Okay. So what we're going to be doing is taking people's phones for a little while. We're going to try and... So, because I don't know if you called anyone or made any phone calls or anything like that. What we do in an investigation like this is we try and collect as much information as we can. Okay, anything that might be small, you may not think is important for us to find out what happened, but is very crucial. So taking something off your phone might be extremely useful for us, even if it's something that you don't realize, okay? And we'll try to get that phone back to you as fast as we can. Okay, is that okay with you? Okay, so this is your phone here?
Yeah, can I tell my mom?
That's fine, that's your mom number. Yep. And then what I'm going to need is your passcode from your phone, or here between the two of us, we can even turn off your passcode, okay?
How do you take a photo? Oh.
You can get out? And if it won't let you do it, that's fine. You can just give me or tell me what your passcode
I
is.
just don't know my...
Okay, what is your passcode? Okay. And what type of...
Can I see my mom text me real quick? Thank you.
Alright, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay. Any social media do you have, like Facebook or anything like do you have any other social media type sites?
I have...
Those the big ones?
Yeah.
Alright. So we're going to kind of go back and try and get a little bit of the timeline, okay? So what did you guys do last night? More specifically, if you were by yourself and not with that group, what is...
Okay. Kind of a lot there, but at the same time, not a whole lot. So let's go ahead and pull up our analysis. Really want to make sure nothing's cut off because I did a whole video where the sides were cut off and that was embarrassing, I'll be honest with you. Okay, so let's see. Taking the phones for a while. We have so she asks, so by the way, there's a lot of redacted stuff here. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But at one point she asks, yeah, can I tell my mom? That's fine. I do not know what standard operating procedure in a case like this is, in a situation like this. The communication on the phone may impact the interview, and that is the concern here, right? So, what did mom say back? Um, I don't know what standard operating procedure is regarding this. It's a little funky, though. Okay, considering that the house that she was just in, all this happened. So so they went through the passcode. There's not a lot here. She also asks again if she can text mom. Um, so yeah, again, I mean, if there's coaching going on, this could potentially influence the subject's response regarding the mother. But we also have the discussion about social media and stuff like that. So the challenge of the analyst is to forget all context, enter into the subject statement with no preconceived notions, and do the best we can to quiet any facts we know about the case already, namely Dylan's statement. What we would expect from the subject is that she would divulge all of her social media accounts, etc. at this point. We would like to see this here, even though there are redactions. There is quite a bit of time being talked, quite a bit of time being used up here between them talking about the social media accounts for the subject. Okay, I kind of worded that weird. But there's like 30 seconds here, there's 40 seconds, there's 20 seconds. So quite a bit of time here. So this appears to be a good sign. Okay, so we don't know what's divulged, but this appears to be a good sign. We are starting with the presupposition that the subject is innocent, has no guilty knowledge, and has a measure of willingness to share, desire to be heard, and aid law enforcement, of course. Okay. So again, we don't know how much is being shared. The sergeant asks, are those the big ones? The answer is yeah. We're going to simply presuppose that all the big ones are shared at this point because we have no other means to verify this. Okay. So, and then we have him starting to get into the meat and potatoes. So let's go ahead and jump back.
Ethan was in the house, so it was Taylor.
So you're with
One of them is my roommates, and one of them is her boyfriend.
Okay. We're going to start here. So he asks if you're by yourself and not with the group. She says, Again, an informal yes or yeah. We've seen a mixture of this so far, considering the context of the reason for this interview. It does indicate possibilities like low maturity. It also may indicate sensitivity to give definitive answers, which would be unexpected. Again, it would be great if the sergeant said, hey, I need yeses or nos. Okay, so unfortunately, the very first question here is redacted. We do not know what he asked, but right off the bat, we get some very important, a very important sentence here. And it was kind of broken up. We have Ethan was in the house, and so was Xana. And then he starts talking. So you were with, and so she kind of finishes off. So I'm going to break this down into two parts. Okay. So unfortunately, we do not know what's being asked here, if anything was asked or was stated. This caveats our analysis of the answer here from the subject. Law enforcement should be asking questions that allow for FEP, the free editing process of the mind, as to not contaminate the statement. Okay, free editing process. Hey, what happened yesterday? The investigator should not be giving subjects words. Okay, should allow them to freely choose where and when and how and why they want to begin speaking, that kind of thing. So we cannot assume whether the sergeant did ask a contaminating question. Maybe he has to rate really great question. Tell me about what happened. Tell me what you know. We don't know. Okay. We can't assume either way at this point. So we do have an opening filler with a pause, which indicates sensitivity. Ethan then follows. We have a social introduction here. Ethan. Who is Ethan in relation to the subject? I said relativity. Sorry. This is an important question. Social introductions give us insight as to the quality of the relationship between the subject and the other person. My friend Ethan, or my roommate Ethan, or something like that would have been a proper social introduction. My title, relation, and name. Okay. Instead, we are confronted with simply Ethan. This is better than a man or a boy. So just to kind of, swing the pendulum, make sure the pendulum's not swung the other way. She does give us the name, which is good. However, given we're only given a name, no relation, it likely indicates a poor quality relationship. Okay. Was in the house. Okay. Was is past tense. Okay. Does this mean that Ethan was in the sense that he was living and now he's not? Or is was here a past tense of retelling of where he was physically at one point in time? We are not sure so far. In the house doesn't specify what house, and there's a measure of psychological distancing with the use of the house, okay? Not our house. If this is the house that 1122 King, where she lives, she didn't say our house. She didn't say my house, okay? We only have the house. This could indicate sensitivity to the location, the house, or the possibility of distancing with Ethan. The presence of Ethan may influence why it is the house, okay? All right. And so was Xana. So I'm actually going to zoom out here a little bit so we can keep seeing this right here. And so was Xana. Ethan and Xana could not be further away from each other in the sentence, okay? Ethan and Xana. This indicates potentially there was distancing between Ethan and Xana in the subject's mind, okay? Ethan and Xana were at the house. This would have been simple. This would have put Ethan and Xana close together. This is not what she chose to say. And the law of economy says that the brain will select the simplest way necessary to communicate a sentence, unless there is sensitivity, okay? So that is it's called the law of economy. Our brains likes to say sentences the simplest and easiest way, okay, as opposed to the most difficult way. There's an infinite amount of ways we can communicate stuff. The law of economy says we like to communicate things simply. I went to the store. Our brain doesn't like to add 50 words unless there's sensitivity, unless there's reason behind it, okay? So the fact that Xana was mentioned last may indicate distancing from the subject to Xana as well, okay? Again, was in front of Xana makes us wonder, was this reference to was as in living or was as in physically? And for example, she will go somewhere else later. We will see. Huge caveat here. We do not know how much was redacted here, and we don't know what the sergeant asked. This makes the analysis here pretty dang weak, unfortunately. Okay, so we're going to move on. Sergeant started kind of saying, so you were with, and our subject says, one of them is my roommates, and one of them is her boyfriend. Here's the analysis. This did happen fast in the sense that the response here was more of a continuation of what the subject said before and less of a response to the sergeant's words here. Okay, it ran together. So that is considered here. My roommate Xana and her boyfriend Ethan were in the house. This is not what the subject said. We are confronted with an extended social introduction, which brings things more to the positive. However, they're both still incomplete. The way this is communicated instead leaves us with a little bit of a puzzle or a riddle to figure out who is which. Okay. So I want to challenge you. If you have no idea about this case, you are an investigator, you're a sergeant, you have no idea who these people are, and you're confronted with Xana and Ethan, right? Ethan was in the house and so was Xana. You don't know who these people are. One of them is my roommates and one of them is her boyfriend. Does that clarify things for you? Okay, so it's a bit of a riddle here. This is not expected. Why is this? It does indicate that saying their names and their relations are sensitive to the subject. Instead of their names, they're replaced with one of them. Okay, one of them. This is a distancing sensitivity indication, as we know these two are victims and are now deceased. It is not ideal for what we are expecting here. Okay, having the initial question clarified before this one would help us with the context, but alas, we don't have that. Okay, so I'm talking about having this clarified, would help us with this analysis even here. Okay. All right. Let me find where we were at. We are hoping to see closeness with the victims. We expect to observe at least a measure of closeness and concern for the victims, that type of thing. So why are we getting a bit of a puzzle here? My roommates, not sure if she added the S at the end, but the audio does sound like this is the case. And I'm not sure if it was intended for her to add the S or not. It is possible she was going to start with one of them is my roommate's boyfriend and decided to change it up mid-sentence. Not sure. Either way, she is not saying Xana and Ethan were my friends, best friends, close friends, etc. At best, my roommate and her boyfriend. Looking at things objectively as we should, the subject may not have been very close with Ethan and Xana. They may have been roommates, but not close friends, just roommates. And the roommate's boyfriend, that's about as close as it got. That wouldn't be necessarily unreasonable, and it wouldn't necessarily be suspicious. We will pay close attention to this, though. We have present tense is her boyfriend, which referring to them as if they are still alive in the present tense is a good sign. Had the subject not known whether Xana and Ethan were deceased at this point, and she referred to them in the past tense, this would indicate that she knew they were deceased, which would be a clear indication of guilty knowledge. Let's say that she was supposed to not even know whether they're dead or not. Based on her account, she had no reason to know whether they're dead. Let's say they were missing, and she talks about them in the past tense, showing that she has processed their deaths, right? A present tense use here is an indication that the processing of their deaths has not completely happened. That's a good sign. The depths of what the subject knows, whether she has been told of their deaths, she witnessed that they were dead, etc., is not clear so far from within this statement. The challenge of the analyst is to block out what the analyst already knows, separate this from the analysis, and allow the subject to guide them only. Guide me. Okay. All right. So hopefully that's making sense. Hopefully you guys can see that. You can hear me. Okay, good. Let's go to the video, and we're going to keep going.
So you're with Ethan
And Xana.
Xana? Mm-hmm. Can you spell that for me?
X-A-N-Y. Or A-N-A, sorry.
X-A-N-A. Okay. Okay, so I'm just trying to... Sometimes it helps me put names together. So you were with Ethan and Xana last night.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to actually stop there. Quite a bit to talk about here. So share this tab. All right. Okay, so you were with Ethan and Xana, the subject says. She says her name here, which is a good sign. She could have said, and my roommate, but instead she said Xana. She also could have said, and my friend Xana, but she didn't say that. She simply said Xana, which so far is a continuation of the indications. I misspelled that. That's going to drive me nuts. Indications of the quality of relationship we've seen so far. Okay, which is not great. The sergeant's question kind of underscores the peculiarity of the riddle that was given earlier. I was with my roommate Xana and her boyfriend Ethan. Would have made economic sense. It would have taken less amount of energy and effort and would have actually been less confusing. Okay, so she kind of went the long way around and being confusing, meanwhile indicating distance with these victims. Okay, so the sergeant's confused. Xana? Subject, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm is another informal yes. It may indicate sensitivity, showing an unwillingness to simply say yes. The sergeant asking the question echoes the lack of clarity from earlier. Okay, he says, can you spell that for me? Subject, X-A-N-Y or A-N-A, sorry. The sergeant asks for spelling here. Xana being an atypical name, it's very understandable to ask this. Given the fact that the subject was asked for her full name earlier, last name and middle name, first, middle, and last, it would have been a good sign if the subject had offered this up without asking. The subject didn't appear to consider this. This is a good time to say that we would expect a measure of willingness to speak for those who have passed away, since they cannot speak for themselves anymore. We have an almost angelic view of those close to us who have passed on. This could be more supporting evidence that the subject has an arm's length relationship to Xana and Ethan, okay? Or an acquaintance type of relationship, okay? X-A-N-Y or A-N-A is what she said, and then sorry. She messed up spelling Xana's name, which may indicate heightened stress. It may indicate her lack of familiarity with Xana. It's understandable that people make mistakes. However, this is in reference to someone who was just murdered, and after she misspoke, she chose not to be thorough and clear by starting again with X, okay? She simply said A-N-A, which is somewhat of a concerning thing, and along with the lack of proper social introduction, underscores a measure of sensitivity regarding Xana. One's consideration is, was Xanny a name that she's used before when she said X-A-N-Y? Is that what is spelled on her phone, for example? Is it a personal nickname? Would that be a derogatory nickname or a positive nickname? This is pure speculation. Just something that this analyst, is considering. Why that Y popped up there? So not interpreting, but just considering, just musing, not making any conclusions. Then we have a sorry. I put sorry in red for a reason. She apologized for what seemed like to be her error. Anytime we see sorry in a statement, we flag it though, as it may be an indication of leakage of feelings of guilt. Okay, leakage is unintended words or emotions that come out in the brain, from the brain to the mouth. Okay, I'm going to talk about leakage a little bit here, but let's finish this. And so it could be indication of leakage of feelings of guilt on a larger scale than simply misspelling Xana's name here. Okay, we do not interpret, but the sorry is there. And we're going to point it out and considering it moving forward. Okay. So I'm going to fix this too. So leakage is the speed of transmission is how statement analysis really is able to get the plane off the ground. This is why it's functional. This is why it works. This is why it is useful and effective. Okay. The brain, the speed of transmission from, we have average 35-year-old has about 25 to 30,000 words in their personal, internal, subjective dictionary. Okay. We all have our own dictionary. And when we recall what has happened, the brain is going back and selecting very specific words from that dictionary, only a few of them, and is organizing them. And that's called syntax, and making it so that the words that are being sent to the mouth make sense to those who are listening. And that speed of transmission, that whole operation is extremely fast. And so when people are deceptive, when there is anxiety, when there's nervousness, when there is intentions to omit information, there is an interference with this speed of transmission, with the speed of transmission from the brain to the mouth. And words that are not intended to come out will come out. Okay. That is called leakage. Okay. So sorry could be leakage. It seems like the sorry is coming out because she misspelled the name, but sorry might spill out because there are deeper feelings of guilt. Okay. So it's just something that we consider. It's not something we conclude. It's just a little bit of a flag. Okay. Not necessarily a red flag, even though I have it in red. All right. So the sergeant is still confused. So we're locking back in here. Okay. XANY or ANA. Sorry. XA. So the sergeant's confused. Okay. Again, she didn't go back and explain XANY or ANA. I mean, this is kind of a riddle here. He's confused. XA, subject, NA. So the sergeant was still unclear about how to spell Xana, which underscores the analysis above. NA, and that's it. Not, let me go back and clarify. It's XANA. That's my friend's name. So we are being alerted to some lack of cooperation with the sergeant and distancing with Xana again. Okay. So now the sergeant goes NA. Okay. So I'm just trying to, sometimes that helps me put names together. Okay. So this kind of is interesting here. I'm not sure what the subject says here. That's okay. It's very hard to hear. The recording is pretty poor sometimes. So the sergeant feels the need to explain what he's trying to do, as if what he's doing, which is clarifying information regarding Xana, needs an explanation. It seems like he perceived that this is sensitive to her. Not interpreting the sergeant here, but just simply considering it. That's just, we look at all the information that we have in this statement. The response is something like, that's okay. Like I said, not sure. Not sure exactly. So the analysis here is moot on what she said. All right. So we're going to get into some interesting stuff here. Let's pop back over to our video. And here we go.
And do you know Ethan's last name?
Achievement. I don't know how to spell it.
Let me go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just trying to. Sometimes it helps me put names together. So you were with Ethan and Xana last night.
Yeah.
And do you know Ethan's last name?
Achievement. I don't know how to spell it.
That's fine.
Okay. Let's break that down. All right. Zoom in just a little bit more. Is that good? That's good. Okay. Sergeant, so you were with Ethan and Xana last night at, I believe this is Sigma Chi. Okay. The transcript I got said this is Sigma Chi. This video from Outcast only has like Sigma Chi twice in this whole statement. Okay. So if it's in red here, that means I'm not 100% sure it's Sigma Chi. I think it is. And at first I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do redacted and I'm going to call it that. But the fact that so much is redacted, it just pisses me off. And so I'm just going to at least throw it out there. And because I feel the public should have this information. That's just my personal opinion. So if it's in red, this has a caveat here. I'm not 100%. I can't say definitively he said Sigma Chi. Okay. Now her answer is yep. Yep is informal. Again, she doesn't further explain. So you were with Ethan and Xana last night at Sigma Chi. Yep. That's it. She awaits another question. This was an opportunity to elaborate. This opportunity was not taken. Okay. The sergeant did not ask an open-ended question here. So it is what it is. She didn't say before, as far as we can tell, that she was with Ethan and Xana at Sigma Chi. We think, based on the transcript that was given to me, and later in the interview, there are two instances of unredacted sigma chi. I guess I said that already. The redactions earlier must have been in reference to this, which underscores how the redactions limit the analysis. Every word is crucial to achieve high quality statement analysis. Okay. So just being honest with you guys. All right. But we're going to analyze it anyway, but it's just the truth. All right. It's just the truth. So what's unredacted, what questions do allow the subject to get into free editing process, the FEP, we can at least use those, and those are going to be given the greatest weight in any conclusions that are made. Okay. All right. So then we have Sergeant. Okay. And how do you know Ethan's last name? Oh, and do you know Ethan's last name? Chapin, I don't know how to spell it. Okay. That's what she said. All right. So we're going to move this down a little bit. So this is here. Yeah. Okay. Is an indication of sensitivity. She paused. We're now given the last name of Ethan because the investigator asked for it. It brings a question to mind as to why this wasn't offered when she first introduced Ethan. This indicates sensitivity to Ethan, between the subject and Ethan, and a measure of psychological distancing. Okay. This is not a good sign, and it echoes the type of relationship we've been understanding from earlier. She apparently knew he was going to ask and said that she didn't know how to spell it before he asked, which indicates preempting here of the question, how do you spell it, right? She was preempting that question from the investigator. Preempting is something we want to pay very close attention to. Preempting the question, preempting indicates the sensitivity of the investigator's presence, okay? And that can be a bad sign, okay? That can be a bad sign. So if people are showing, if subjects are indicating that they are nervous about the presence of an investigator, okay? If there's intense sensitivity about that, that can be a bad sign indicating guilt, indicating stress over law enforcement, okay? So preempting the question about spelling is not particularly concerning. The fact that the subject doesn't know how to spell Ethan's last name may mean a few things. It may further corroborate that she was simply not very close with this person, didn't have much interaction with him, and didn't have his phone number in her phone, that kind of thing. I don't know is something we want to pay close attention to, especially if it comes out towards a question that hasn't been asked. We really want to understand that. That could be a huge clue, okay? So we're going to look for any change from this kind of arm's length or acquaintance relationship as we go through the statement, okay? It here is a reference to his last name, not Ethan as a person, okay? So she wasn't, it doesn't seem like she's referring to Ethan as a person. That would be a really bad sign, okay? All right, so we're going to move on in the video. Let's get back to it.
What's last name?
Kernodle.
Do you know spell it?
I think it's Kernodle. Maybe another ODLE or something like that.
Okay. Okay, so you're within the same. What time did you guys get the different guys also?
Around 8 something. Maybe 8:30.
So 8:30 p.m.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. And prior to that, were you guys just at your house?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you left from your house.
Ethan was that formal because he went with his sister because she didn't have a date. And then we were just hanging out at our house. And then he came over and we all walked over together.
All right. Let's pop back over to our analysis. Okay. So, yeah, see it okay? Yep. Sergeant, that's fine. And Xana's last name, Kernodle, I believe is how you say it. You know how to spell it? I think it's Kerno, maybe another Odle or something like that. Okay. indicates some thinking going on. A pause indicating sensitivity. The attempt to spell Xana's name is an indication. Why is that misspelled? The attempt to spell Xana's name is an indication that Xana was closer to the subject than Ethan. The caveats indicate that this relationship, while apparently closer than Ethan, is still not very close, which is a continuation of what we've observed in the statement so far. We're seeing consistency in this. Okay, so you're with them at, we believe, Sigma Chi. Huge caveat there. What time did you guys get to? Again, we believe Sigma Chi last night. Around 8 something, maybe 8:30. We have a range here, some caveats. Around something, maybe, not certainty. Not a great question here, okay? But again, the critique may change if we didn't have the earlier redactions. The critique might diminish, might increase, okay? So, and the reason being is because you're with them. There's just some interesting things here, okay? So we're going to get into a little bit more, so I don't want to dive into it right now. So 8:30 p.m., something like that, yeah. So not certainly regarding this time. The sergeant apparently wanted to just write down a time rather than a range. I mean, earlier she said something maybe 8 to 8:30. So 8:30 p.m., kind of strange. Okay, and prior to that, were you guys just at your house? Okay, another informal yes. All right. So you left from your house. So he kind of wasn't finished with that. And as we're going to see this, I don't know if you noticed this, but it was kind of a continuation here. Okay, so kind of another little awkward talking over each other. But let's look at this. Ethan was at formal because he went with his sister because she didn't have a date. And then we were just hanging out at our house. And then he came over and then we all walked over together. Okay. Seems like a pretty simple statement. And I am showing you guys kind of how I analyze here, what I mark and how I do it. I thought that'd be kind of fun for you guys to see. And as I'm looking at things, you can kind of pick them out here. Okay. The analysis here. The subject was not asked a direct question. The subject possibly interrupted the sergeant here, indicating that she was possibly answering, were you guys just at your house? Okay. Based on where the sergeant was prefacing this apparent next question, so he left from the house, he was looking at post-house events. Okay. So he's psychologically kind of moving on. However, she went back before they walked over together. We have two explanations as to why, which are very important sensitivity indications. Okay. So if you see the green here, cause and cause, okay, explanations as to why. So we need to pay close attention to them. She felt the need to explain why Ethan was at formal, number one, and two, why he was with his sister at the formal. I'm not sure what or where formal is. Ethan going to formal was sensitive for her, as she was preempting the question, why was Ethan at formal? And she also preempted the question, why was he at formal with his sisters? Okay. His sister. Ethan was at formal and we, was at formal and me, blank, and blank were hanging out. That would have been fine. Why the need to explain this, right? So Ethan was at formal and me and, whoever were hanging out. She doesn't do that. She goes on to explain what I'm talking about here. So why the need to explain this? I'm going to actually bring this down just a little bit so we can keep seeing the statement as we're talking about it. So the sensitivity was not asked about, unfortunately. Okay. So he doesn't ask about these sensitivity indications explaining why. This piece of information would be important to verify in the investigation. Did Ethan go to formal with his sister? Obviously, it would be a very important piece. So then we have a temporal lacunae, which is a passage of time. Okay, passage of time is the and thens. Okay, so we have 3 temporal lacunae. So anytime we see that, that indicates missing information. Okay, the mind is marking that some time passed, which means information is getting passed. And that missing information between Ethan being at formal and hanging out. So in between those two things, okay, is missing information. When she says we were just hanging out, it is not known who we is here. Okay. Who's we? All right. We indicates cooperation and unity. Okay. So that's what that word means. Okay. Interpreting this, we would assume that this meant Xana and the subject. So far, we have Ethan and Xana and the subject. So we don't interpret, though. So there may be missing information here. This could be deception in the sense of concealing who all we is here. So there could be a missing introduction here, okay? A complete missing social introduction of someone. We aren't making any conclusions. We're just noting possibilities. So there is a just here, which indicates she was thinking about something else other than hanging out, okay? Just, the word just, refutes what was said before. It minimizes, or it could minimize what was said before it. However, it is also a comparison word, okay? So it's kind of a juicy word. So there were 4 avocados on the table, and my wife says, hey, there were 4 here and now there's none. And I go, well, I just had one. I just had one, honey. I was thinking of the 4, and just is in relation to the 4, right? So there's multiple things being thought of, not just one thing. So just here indicates that the subject was thinking of something other than hanging out. And we don't have anything within the context of words to point to. Okay. So there's something there in her mind. Just here is persuasive. Okay. We were just hanging out. Hey, what were you guys doing yesterday? We were just hanging out. Okay. That's an indication of something other than hanging out happened. Okay. There's some persuasion there. So she uses our house instead of the house. Okay. So look at this. Okay. We were just hanging out at our house. So this is a change. Okay. Earlier, she was referred to the house. So the question is, what made the house change from our house? Okay. It's pretty interesting. It appears that when Ethan was in it, it was the house. When Ethan was not in it, it is our house. Okay. So this is telling me that the subject doesn't consider Ethan to be a part of our house. Okay. The use of house also seems to connect we. All right. We were just hanging out at our house. And again, based on what we've been given, is assumed to be Bethany and Xana's house. Okay. But this is not clear, but just from what we understand so far, we're open to other ideas. But, and so this change of language is just really important. If we're seeing a change of language from the house to our house, and there's no explanation, it could be deception. We do see the change. We do see that Ethan is the change, right? So Peter Hyatt, my mentor, the professional statement analyst that I did learn from, he would give examples when people would. He gave an example of a statement where an individual said, I was driving my car down the freeway and it started sputtering and broke down. I left my vehicle on the side of the road and walked down to the nearest shop. So again, I was driving my car, it sputtered, broke down. I left my vehicle. So there was a change in language. What changed from why did the subject refer to it as a car in one sense and then started talking about it as a vehicle? Well, the car stopped working. So the change of language makes sense. In another instance, it is the officer pulled his gun from his holster, pointed and fired his weapon, then put his gun back into his holster. So what made the object change from a gun to a weapon back to a gun? Well, the firing of it changed it to a weapon. And then once it was done being fired, it changed back to gun. That makes sense. We like to see an explanation as to the change of language. Okay. And we see that here with the house. So just kind of help clarifying that in case you're a little confused. So another temporal lacunae, all right, and then, which indicates missing information between hanging out and he came over. Okay. So just hanging out at our house. So there was missing information here, just hanging out at our house, missing information here, passage of time, he came over. Okay. He makes some sense in this phrase because she identified Ethan earlier when in this statement. Ethan was at formal because he went with his sister because she didn't have a date, and then we were just hanging out at our house, and then he, okay. We're going to assume that that's Ethan, okay. Now, he didn't come home, he came over. So again, this is consistent with the change of language and the subject's view that we're picking up here, okay. Ethan is not part of the household in the subject's mind, okay. No, when she uses he, we are assuming this includes Ethan. Okay, so I said that. Although there is a logical possibility that a different he has entered into the statement. It's merely a possibility, so we'll be open to that. Okay, however, the came over, all right, kind of supports that this is Ethan, okay? So we have a temporal lacunae again, indicating a passage of time and missing information between he came over and we walked over, okay? So he came over and then we all walked over. So when he came over, that's telling us there was stuff that happened there. Okay. There was a passage of time. How long? We don't know. Okay. And then we all walked over together. Okay. All right. Where are we? So we all is now present, indicating cooperation and unity. We all, indicating with no exceptions, everyone, right? That's what all means. All means all. All makes some sense here. There was a break from all with the separation of Ethan. Now Ethan is back, and that's all. Interpreting this, we're assuming this means Xana, Ethan, and the subject. We're just following the course of what the subject's telling us. Okay. Walked over together. Now here, walked over together. Together seems to be an unnecessary word. Why? Together appears to reinforce that we didn't simply walk. We walked together. This indicates some sensitivity here. Okay. This may be persuasion. So we will be on the lookout here for why this togetherness was sensitive. Was there an issue before they walked and now there wasn't? In other words, was there possible friction about who was all going where earlier and now they're together? Or was there a sense of separation? Maybe physical separation, emotional, psychological separation. And we're seeing the emphasis because there's a need to conceal this. Okay. So we will keep this in mind moving forward, as well as unforeseen reasons this word may have been included. Okay. So we walked over to Sigma Chi would be fine. You know, that's what I'm saying here. Okay. We walked over to Sigma Chi. Instead, we walked over together. Okay. Together. Walked is specific rather than we went to Sigma Chi. Okay. So we went to Sigma Chi is really simple. Okay. So the subject specifies the mode of transportation here, which is something investigators, it seems, could verify via phone data, port cameras, and other means. Okay. All right. Let's keep listening. Hopefully I'm making sense to y'all.
Okay, so that was you, Ethan, Xana. Was there another person with you? Or just the three of you that
Maddie walked over with us.
Okay. This is huge. Okay. So that was you, Ethan, Xana. Was there another person with you or just the three of you? Maddie walked over with us. Analysis. This is a relatively simple question. Another person or just three of you? And it's a relevant question. Okay. We earlier noted that embedded in we may be more people than Xana, Ethan, and the subject. And we were hoping that this was not the case, but merely considering it a possibility. And the question unearthed Exactly that. The inclusion of Maddie into we denotes sensitivity in the negative. The subject concealed Maddie's presence. Okay. Earlier, she said we all walked over together. All we had known is Ethan and Xana. Okay. There is clear psychological distancing with Maddie here for a number of reasons. This was not expected. Okay. Indicating she had to think about this denotes sensitivity. It's a pause. The sentence is not clear as to what she's meaning in the sense that we do not know who else we earlier or us now us based on the subject's own words. Okay. The question is, why didn't she mention Maddie before? Why did a question have to be asked for her to be clear about, at the very least, that Maddie came with us? With is a word that denotes distancing. Okay. Maddie, Xana, Ethan, and I, and me, walked over to Sigma Chi, right? Is simple, clear, and likely true. Okay. That's not what she said. All right. If we were to take earlier, we all walked over together. Now we're to assume that all, or now us, was Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Bethany, but we're still not going to assume that this is the case. We do not interpret. We let the subject speak for herself. So even though now Maddie is clarified to be part of we, I'm saying there could be more, right? We're going to still be open to that. So that leaves us with the lack of understanding what exactly who all are in her mind, even now, okay? Us is assumed to be Xana, Ethan, and Bethany. However, we cannot be sure that's all there was here. We also have a social introduction here. So not only did she conceal Maddie's presence here, we have a poor social introduction. Maddie, only Maddie. And it is noticed that no last name, no title, no relationship is explained. Who is she in relation to the subject? This indicates a poor relationship quality. The expected social introduction of my friend or roommate, Maddie Mogan, would indicate respect. Instead, it's simply Maddie. And where did they go? This is not specific at this point. Walked over with us. Wait, walked over where? If she cannot say it, we will not say it for her. Okay. We are alerted to the fact that there is a hindered flow of information here and concealed information, which is not what we would have expected. Okay. The fact that this is Maddie is a victim and is at the time of this interview deceased. The fact that this experience is likely one of the few last moments she's seen alive makes this concealment even more alarming. Considering that together was mentioned earlier, this may support, together kind of stood out, right? We had some questions about that togetherness. This is unnecessary, right? We considered all that. So this may support some of the propositions we made earlier about some friction, possible friction around at this time. Okay, so we're kind of getting some signals here. Also, we don't have clarity after the sentence as to whether there were more included in this walking together scene. Okay. I'm hoping that makes sense. Let's jump back over to our video. We're going to listen on.
Okay. And that's
Logan.
Logan?
Mm-hmm.
Was it M-A-D-D-I-E?
Mm-hmm. Her real name is Madison, though, I believe.
Okay. So you guys all walked over to... You were there about 8:30.
Okay. Let's look at this. Okay. Maddie walked over with us. We went through this analysis. Sergeant. Okay. And that's who? Mogan. Analysis. Is Mogan a new person? Is that Maddie's last name? I mean, from the sergeant's perspective, does he know her name? The analyst must ask this question, even though the analyst does know that this is Maddie's last name because of knowledge of case facts. I went over that. Okay, I know her name. The subject simply said Mogan with no other explanation. This is interpreting, but it's difficult to sense this as anything but a bit cold here. Maddie Mogan is her full name, or Madison Mogan is her full name and she goes by Mogan. That's not what the subject said. Just Mogan. The subject does not give a complete social introduction. Okay. We are simply being alerted to the idea that the flow of information is hindered and there's poor relationship with Maddie or Mogan. She doesn't offer to explain or spell this name. Given the sergeant asked for the spelling of the other names, it would be a sign of cooperation and contextual recognition by the subject to spell Maddie's name. This is further support for the concern that the flow of information is being somewhat hindered and psychological distancing between the subject and the victim. Okay. Mogan? Analysis. Is informal. Yes, again. We have no yes or yeah, but no explanation as to what or who Mogan is. Okay. So the sergeant's confused. Is it Maddie? Maddie? Her real name is Madison, though, I believe. Analysis. The sergeant, being understandably confused, asked for the spelling of Maddie. We also have another informal answer of yes. Her choosing not to say her name, which the law of economy affords this. But given the fact that the sergeant is asking the third question about who is Maddie, or her name or spelling, etc., it seems to be another indication of sensitivity regarding the victim. Maddie Mogan, her full name is Madison Mogan. This is not what she said. She also used the word real name. It does make some sense that she didn't say full name because she only gave a singular full form name of Maddie. Okay. She used is, which is good, the victim being spoken about in present tense, indicating a resistance or a slowed processing of the fact Maddie being deceased again. So just being objective here and calling spade a spade. All right. Now, I didn't write this here, but I believe, further supports, she believes that's what Maddie is. Maddie's is short for Madison. This, again, supports what we've been getting here. This is a poor relationship, okay? How many people do you know that you know their short name, but you don't know their full name? This is not someone you're close with, okay? So this is what we're getting from Bethany. All right. So you guys walked over to, we believe, Sigma Chi. Okay. Not sure, but you were there about 8:30. So he said about, which is good. Analysis. A great question here would have been, among many, so Ethan comes back. Then what happened? Right? That's not what he asks. Is another informal yes. It is noted here that walked over is not the same thing as walked over to Sigma Chi. Okay. So again, walked over. Okay. There's not a specific place. Okay. There's a question here as to whether they walked directly to Sigma Chi. Okay. Just being logical here. Or if there was somewhere else they went first. It appears the officer, quote unquote, connected these dots for her, which is unfortunate, as again, the subject did not specify where they walked to. This time he says about 8:30. She said something 8:30. Okay. Just noting that here. All right. So now we get some more information coming up. We're going to pop back over to our video and listen on.
Were you guys all pretty much together, or just kind of mingling throughout the house most of the night?
We were all pretty much together, and then Maddie left to go to the club with Kaylee. And then I was with Ethan and Santa most of the night, but then one of my friends came. Her name's Lee, and I hung out with her the rest of the night.
Okay. Let's talk about this one. The sergeant gives her words here. Okay. Were you guys all pretty much together, just kind of mingling throughout the house most of the night? This is a poor question. Okay. We were all pretty much together, and then Maddie left to go to the club with Kaylee, and then I was with Ethan and Xana most of the night, but then one of my friends came. Her name is, we're not sure here. The transcript says Yessie that I was given. The video does not say that. It is redacted. And I hung out with her the rest of the night. Okay, so this might be false. I mean, I'll be pretty frustrated if this is just blatantly false, but I'm just including it. Okay. So let's start here. What happened from there? And then what happened? You know, this is what we're looking for. Okay. This is important so the subject can go into free editing process and her statement will not be contaminated. Okay. This would also be a legally sound practice. Okay. Indicates thinking and sensitivity to begin with. We were all pretty much together. This is parroted. Okay, so these words in blue were parroted, what we call parroted from the sergeant. Okay, this section is what we call contaminated. Therefore, all right, he gave her those words. That's what we call contamination. All right, contaminating the statement. She's echoing or parroting his words, and the opportunity for meaningful analysis is destroyed. Okay, I'm not going to analyze these words because they're parroted. So we move on. And then, okay, so now everything from here, though, in gray right now, we can analyze that. And then is a temporal lacunae, a passage of time, okay, indicating missing information, okay. Maddie leaves at this point. The word left indicates sensitivity, okay. Maddie went to the club is simpler, right? The extra explanation denotes sensitivity. I'm thinking of the word left here. Okay, Maddie left. The extra explanation denotes sensitivity along with the sensitivity indicated regarding the subject sensing the need to explain why Maddie left, which she says to go to the club. This is indicative that there is possibly missing information here and sensitivity. Was there a fight? Was there an argument? In other words, Maddie left, Maddie leaving, but I want you to understand that she left because she went to the club with Kaylee. Okay, that's what we're kind of getting here. There could have been tension here. We don't interpret, but we just consider this. All right, and we left, or I left, or Maddie left. When I first was trained on this, I was pretty confused about left. Okay. There's more instances of this later on, and I might explain this twice, so forgive me, but you know, this is a major sensitivity indication, okay, in statement analysis. We really want to look at that because there could be some deception there. Oftentimes there is deception. Oftentimes there is huge pieces of information there as to why the leaving was noted in the brain, okay? Usually if there was nothing to it, they just left, it's not marked in the brain, okay? It's not said. It's not communicated, okay? We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And now we have a social introduction of Kaylee, okay, in blue here. This is the first time her name has been introduced. Again, we do not have the relational connection between the subject and Kaylee and pronoun my, for example, my and my friend or my roommate, Kaylee, okay, which indicates psychological distance, poor relationship between subject and Kaylee. We also have another temporal lacunae right after Kaylee, a passage of time, which alerts us to missing information here. All right. So there's a lot of sensitivity going on here. I was with Ethan and Xana. With denotes distancing here. Okay, believe it or not. Between I and Ethan and Xana. Okay, this is indication of distancing, actually. So the example here is like Bill Clinton. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I and Miss Lewinsky could not be further east to west on a sentence. Those names could not be further apart. With is actually a distancing word. Okay. Me and Ethan and Xana were hanging out most of the night. Okay. Psychologically, there is that's closeness. Okay. If there's a with in between, it denotes distance, right? That could be, it was Ethan and Xana, and I was just kind of with them. I was an accessory, who knows what that is? Most is a caveat. Okay. Most of the night, but not all, right? So not all of the night, right? I'm going to zoom out here just a little bit so we can keep seeing this. Hopefully that's not too small for you. Let me look at that. Yeah, it might be a little too small, but okay. So we're going to break down most of the night, but then one of my friends came. Her name is Yessie, and I hung out with her the rest of the night. Okay. So then we are confirmed of this. All right. Most is a caveat, not all. So we're confirmed of this by but, which refutes or minimizes what was said before. And then one of my friends came. Her name is, we believe, is Yessie. Okay. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. That's what came on this transcript that I was provided. Could be wrong. We have a complete social introduction here, if this is the case, indicating closeness and a good relationship. Okay. We have a nice contrast between Yessie and the subject and the 4 victims. Okay. There's a contrast between subject and Yessie, subject and Ethan, between the subject and Ethan. We're going to categorize that in one bucket. Subject and Ethan, subject and Maddie, subject and Xana, subject and Kaylee. That's in one bucket. We contrast that with subject and Yessie. All right. One of my friends, her name is Yessie. Okay. That is a complete social introduction. Again, if it is in fact Yessie. Okay. If it's not, this is going to look really foolish. Might be someone else. All right. She doesn't give a last name, but she does give the 3 we're looking for regarding a complete social introduction. All right. My friend name. Now, came is the only word connecting Yessie to the scene. All right. This is kind of interesting here. I'm going to mark where I'm at. Then one of my friends came. Her name is Yessie. Okay. Does this mean the friend came in to where the subject was? Does this mean she walked inside? That the friend walked inside? Does this mean the friend drove over, texted the subject, waited in the car, and the subject came out to her? Does this mean the subject and her friend hung out at the party from there? There appears to be some missing information here. We're not given the details of exactly how the subject's friend entered into the scene. Came is the only word. We simply know her friend came. This is an indication of sensitivity and missing information. Okay. And I hung out with her the rest of the night. Okay. We believe her. It's a simple sentence. And I hung out with her the rest of the night. Okay. However, the rest of the night indicates that she was no longer with Xana and Ethan the rest of the night. She was with Yessie. Number 1. Number 2, we will expect that holds true from here. The rest of the night speaks of finality. Okay. It's similar to the end. It speaks to finality. And, then I hung out with Yessie, and I hung out with her the rest of the night. The end. The whole experience with Yessie is sensitive to the subject, therefore. And clearly the rest of the night indicates missing information. She seemingly does not desire to share what exactly they did, where they went, etc., which speaks to the sensitivity that I'm talking about. Okay. Once Yessie came, what happened? Given the basic context of knowing the names of the 4 victims that were murdered, this would seem to be important information. Yet, we are confronted with a sort of psychological barricade the rest of the night. I'm hoping that makes sense. Okay. We're going to go back. We're going to listen on.
And who was that?
Her name's yes.
Can you spell it for me? Okay. And his last name?
I don't know how to pronounce it, and her full name is bigger than that.
Okay, that's fine. Do you have a phone number for her?
Yeah.
It's on your phone. Okay, we can get that in a minute. Okay, so you were with, and at that point, Ethan and Xana were just kind of hanging out still at the house? Okay.
And then I went.
All right, we're going to stop there. Back that up just a little bit. Okay. Let's get back to our transcript. And we are here. Let's take a look. How's that looking? Looking pretty good. Okay. Okay, and who was that? Now, just bear in mind, there's 2 new names here. 2 new names, okay? And who was that? Her name is, we're thinking Yessie, okay? Analysis. The sergeant doesn't specify which of the 2 names mentioned with this question, right? We don't know. Is he asking about both or one? This portion is redacted, okay? So I'm a little I'm careful here, all right? The transcript I was given included only the name Yessie. It appears there's only time allowed for 1 name here. This is just my speculation, okay? This is very poor analysis, but for the sake of argument, if the subject said only Yessie and doesn't offer to reshare the name of Kaylee, this is a concerning sign of further psychological distancing between the subject and Kaylee, the victim. The subject is apparently more concerned with the officer knowing Yessie's name and not Kaylee's. These were 2 new names. The lack of resharing Kaylee's name further supports the psychological distancing noted earlier regarding the lack of complete social introduction for Kaylee. Again, we're seeing a contrast between Yessie and Kaylee. Okay, based on the statement so far, Yessie, I'm going to mark her in red. She needs to be in red, okay? Because we're not 100% sure about this. Whoops. Sorry, I'm editing as I go here, guys. It's kind of low quality, but hey, whatever. I'm just a guy out here. Based on the statement so far, Yessie is closer to the subject than all 4 victims, okay? Then we have some redacted. Yes, can you spell that for me? Redacted. Okay, redacted. Last name. I don't know how to pronounce it, and her full name is bigger than that. Analysis. Based on the transcript I was given, it appears that this is all in reference to Yessie. On balance, there are 2 possibilities here. 1, the closeness of the subject and Yessie is diminished by the lack of knowing how to pronounce her full name. Okay? If you're really close to someone, you'd think you'd know how to pronounce full name. Number 2, this is indicating sensitivity and psychological distancing in the negative or concealment of the friend's name. Okay? So 1 of 2 things are going on here. Okay, that's fine. Do you have a phone number for her? Yeah. Indicates some sensitivity. A pause. And she says, yeah, here, rather than, It's in your phone. Okay, we can get that in a minute. Okay, so you were with, we think, he says, Yessie here. We have another informal, This would be a great time to ask, and then what happened? Okay, but he doesn't. Okay. The sergeant asks something else. And at that point, Ethan and Xana were just kind of hanging out still at the house. So this is an interesting piece here. So the analysis, we don't get the question we were hoping for, right? The sergeant felt the need to ask about Ethan and Xana. So subconsciously or consciously, it appears the detective was tracking harder regarding the whereabouts of Ethan and Xana but not focusing on the person and testimony of the person speaking in front of him. Okay, and where she was at in the statement. All right. The subject said that she was with Yessie the rest of the night. Asking about Ethan and Xana, what they were doing at this point is to ask her for information that she would have no apparent personal experience of. She would have secondhand information at best, unless there's something that is hidden from us here. If we are to interpret what's being said, the subject is no longer with Xana and Ethan within the statement. The subject is with Yessie. Then we have the end of this question, the house, which is unspecific. What house? Whose house? Poor questioning here, okay? I'm a little confused. The subject answers, Analysis. The subject is simply says, which is another informal yes. This is alarming here, and this needs to be carefully treated. The question was poorly worded and contaminating hanging out, okay? All right, that's contamination. It's giving her words. If we were to, quote, connect the dots, the subject's now with Yessie and is not present to observe the actions or location of Ethan and Xana. Here could very well be a lie, as she may not have personal knowledge of their situation at this point in time. Okay, so stick with me. The sergeant said up above, okay, so you're with Yessie. Subject said, And at that point, Ethan and Xana were just kind of hanging out still at the house. What does that at point mean exactly? Does that point mean the moment Yessie arrived? Again, we don't know about this arrival. All we know is she came, right? As we noted earlier. Unfortunately, the lack of clarity here makes it hard to draw very many conclusions about this. We would expect a clear delineation between what the subject does know and what she doesn't know. What she can say based on her observation, and ensuring that there's no confusion between what she observed and what may have been happening. We're on high alert here for the possibility of obfuscating here by the subject, okay? All right, let's go back.
Still at the house?
Mm-hmm. And then I went to our other friend's house.
Okay. What time was that at?
I don't know, maybe like 12-ish. But that could be wrong.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Kind of a lot here too. All right. So at that point, Ethan and Xana were just kind of hanging out. Hold on. Can you see this? Okay. We talked about that. We're on high alert here. Okay. Might be some obfuscation. Sergeant says, okay. Subject says, and then I went, there's a little skip here, with Yessie to our other friend's house. All right. Analysis. No question was asked. The subject begins to tell us now unprompted. We're listening very closely. Note that we do not know how far ahead she may be thinking now. Okay, echoing what we talked about earlier. We're a little confused here. And then is another temporal lacunae indicating missing information. Okay, passage of time. Now, earlier, the subject had said she was with Ethan and Xana most of the night. She also said that she was with Yessie the rest of the night. So with each passage of time, each and then, temporal lacunae, we are wondering exactly how much time with Ethan and Xana she had compared to time with Yessie. Okay. She said most. All right. Most means most, right? 50%, more than 50%, right? This is something investigators would want to investigate. If it turns out she was actually with Ethan and Xana for only a few minutes, for example, and she's with Yessie a long time, then we would see deception. Okay. So I went with Yessie. There was a hitch here indicating sensitivity. It almost seems like she forgot to mention Yessie came with her. So what do I mean? It could be interpreted, she went to say, I went to with Yessie, right? If there's just one more, if there's an O there, I went to with Yessie. We don't interpret. We just consider the possibility. Additionally, so it's like she forgot about Yessie, right? That's what I'm saying. It could be a possibility. All right. Additionally, with indicates some distance with Yessie. Okay. I talked about that. Is Yessie an accessory? There's an impression that Yessie brought her to the location. She was kind of a tag along, or that the subject brought Yessie to the location. Yessie was the tag along, you know? She was an accessory. One was an accessory for the other, right? Something like that. Just considering, okay? Not interpreting. But the with makes us wonder, okay? We went to is simple and economical. The brain likes to use the simplest path it can, unless there are sensitivities. This is the law of economy, okay? So we went, and then we went to our other friend's house. That's not what she said. And then she separated. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say here. There was a separation between, there was we, and now there's a separation. I went with Yessie, okay? Now, she could be explaining who she went with, right? That might be the sensitivity, to be extra clear. So we should be charitable and objective and consider all situations here. So we have another friend who's unidentified, okay? Our other friend's house, okay? So this is something we're really going to key in on here, okay? So we have another friend who's unidentified, an incomplete social introduction with the name being concealed. Again, we're alerted to the hindrance of the flow of information and distancing with the new other friend, okay? This could be for a number of reasons. Number one, wanting to conceal the other friend's identity. Number two, wanting to conceal the location. Number three, she didn't want to go there at the time. Number four, there was a bad experience there, okay? So there could be a few different reasons, right? So just to name a few possibilities, we're unsure exactly why. However, we note the psychological distancing. So we note it, that's for sure. Why? We're not sure. We have our other friend's house, which indicates that this may be a second friend's house, okay, which we're not told about. All right. Other friend's house could be the other friend in the sense that other than Yessie, right? Yessie's the first friend. Then we go to the other friend. Or it could be they were at the first friend's house, which is concealed by the and then, the temporal lacunae, and they went to our other friend's house, a second location after sigma chi. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense. Okay, and then to finish off this section, okay, what time was that? I don't know, maybe like 12-ish, but that could be wrong. Okay, this is an interesting answer. All right, analysis. The sergeant asks for the time here. The confusion about time is understandable as there have been jumps in time since he asked for a timestamp. The subject doesn't know the time. So I love this because the sergeant, we kind of intuitively know some of these things in statement analysis, but the jumps and then we might not be able to articulate it, but subconsciously I feel like we get this we get a lot of this stuff. It's just hard to articulate it. Anyway, I'm a nerd. I love statement analysis. The subject doesn't know the time. I don't know, right? She continues and caveats a number of times she caveats a number of times that it's 12-ish. Okay. I don't know, maybe but indicates sensitivity to the question. Okay. A repeated word, but along with the caveats. That could be wrong. Maybe leakage here. Okay. I want to talk about that. That may be something else entirely, not related to time, but the relevant location and what happened here. Okay. The word that. All right. She might be leaking. Because on the face of it, that could be wrong is the time. But that could be wrong, could be leakage of something else. The I don't know, the maybe like, the ish, the but is underscoring the sensitivity here big time. And afterwards, after all those sensitivity indications, okay, the word wrong being brought out may be leakage that, quote, something wrong happened here, okay? Something immoral. We're not sure if this is the case, but it's a consideration. Excuse me. Could be wrong, could simply be an indication that the time and place here is sensitive to the subject, okay? If it is incorrect, that seems very important to the subject. In other words, it could be that telling the truth about the time may be exactly what she doesn't want to do. Okay? She's floating out. It could be wrong. It could be that she's leaking that it is wrong, immoral of her to say that time. Okay? That could be wrong. It could be wrong of me saying it's 12-ish. Or she is sensitive to giving out inaccurate information. So we're going to be balanced here. Okay? We're going to be objective. Not everything is nefarious, but we must consider the nefarious as well as the non-nefarious. Now, she is sensitive to giving out inaccurate information. The latter, this idea here, is difficult to defend given the rest of the night language, kind of a psychological barricade she gave, the lack of social introduction to this place, to this person, the other friend, the lack of sharing regarding whose house this was, etc. So it's hard to argue that, oh, she's just sensitive about giving inaccurate information about time. Well, how could that, why, is that supported in the greater context here? I don't think so, but it is possible, okay? Preferably the sergeant then would ask, what happened once you got there, right? We're waiting for that because we are getting a lot of sensitivity about this location, about this other friend's house. A lot of sensitivity, okay? All right, we're going to move on and go back to our recording.
And where's that house?
It's just like up the street. I don't know the address.
Okay, up the street from
St. Mackay,
okay.
kind of.
So you guys are at St. Mackay, so you're walking back towards.
We're walking back towards my house, and then we're up this way.
So like when you got to Taylor Street, you went up. So if you walked all the way from Sigma News,
Or
St. Mackay, sorry.
Yeah. You know the apartments, the whites.
Yep, I know the whites.
It's like that street, that way.
So on Taylor.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you know roughly where on Taylor, or does she live maybe on the other off streets?
It's on Taylor, but it's like one of the end houses by the intersection. I don't know how to explain it.
All right.
All right, we're going to start there, and let's get back to our transcript. All right. He says, no, it's fine. Okay. Where's that house at? It's just like up the street. I don't know that address. Analysis. Denotes thinking, pausing, indicating sensitivity to the question. Wait, let me make sure you can see it. Yep, you can. We have a just, which denotes minimizing, refuting, and or two or more things being in mind here. It's just like up the street. What would be minimizing? Where's the house? What would be refuting? Where the house is. Just has some persuasion here. He is simply asking where it is after all. Okay? It's just like up the street. Could be, look, it's just like up the street, okay? I don't know that address, you know? We're not going to interpret it. But we're kind of getting an indication here. She explains where it is like, which is up the street. This is not clear. Just like up the street. This further corroborates that this is sensitive to the subject. Up the street from where? There's no clarity. She also says that she doesn't know that address, okay? That denotes distancing language rather than this address, their address, or the address, okay? This also supports the notion that this is sensitive to the subject, okay? So there's this, there's that. This is close physically. Hey, would you hand me that No, not this close to me, that far away. For every this, there's a that. For every that, there's a this, as Peter would say. That also denotes distancing language. We're getting so many indications here. Okay, it's very interesting. Okay, up the street from, which is exactly what I talked about. Sigma chi, he says K, kind of. Analysis, case in point, he asks up the street from where? Sigma chi kind of, which makes it even more obfuscating. This makes the analyst wonder, what is this place? Whose place is it? And what happened there? This is a major question, and the hope is that the investigator will ask, what happened there? So you guys were at Sigma Chi, so you're walking backwards. We walked backwards towards my house and then went up this way. The sergeant apparently is not giving up on this and wants to know where this place is. I applaud his attempt. We understand so far is the subject in Yessi. If we're tracking properly, that what the subject is apparently intending to communicate. We're open to the idea that we could be wrong about this, as we do not interpret, okay? But that's kind of the yellow brick road that we're being confronted with so far. They were not in a car, they walked. However, the sergeant said that he contaminated this, okay? So you're walking back towards, okay? Did Yessi drive them? We would have liked the subject to explain this in her own words with no contamination, right? The subject explains that they walked back towards my house, which is rather clear. Back indicates from Sigma Chi, okay? So that's good. Gives us a little bit more clarity. They went towards her house, then a passage of time with and then, okay? And then we have a potentially drop pronoun we after and then. All right. It's a possibility here. Not certain that this is the case. Right. So we walked back towards my house and then passage of time went up this way. This could be a tricky drop pronoun here. This could be deceptive. And then could indicate we is no longer we here. And we is concealed, or I'm sorry, I is concealed, or an addition of a different party. All right. So we're going to consider that here. Now she could be drawing on we. We walked back towards my house and then drawing on the we went up this way. But we must consider, especially with the and then. Okay. So I'm just pointing this out. And this way, when she said it, she was making physical gestures to explain to the officer. Okay. So then more discussion. So like when you got to the Taylor Street, you went up. So if you walk all the way from Sigma News or Sigma Chi. Okay. So Sigma Chi is said here. All right. So this makes me feel better about our analysis earlier. All the Sigma Chi's in red earlier. Just saying that. Yeah. You know, the apartments, the whites. Yep. I know the whites. It's like that straight that way. So on Taylor, yeah. Okay, all right. Do you know how roughly we're on Taylor, or does she live maybe one of the other off streets? It's on Taylor, but like one of the end houses by the interstate. I don't know how to explain it. Okay. Analysis. The sergeant was strong in this. I applaud that. She does clarify some things here. She mentions the whites, which is interesting. That's more information than what she gave us about the actual location we were trying to find out about. You know, we have some sort of name here connected to the location that she's using to explain proximity to the actual location, which is an interesting contrast. She also said that it is on Taylor, which that information was not shared earlier. Again, why didn't she simply say this earlier on her own? Okay, it's on Taylor Street. It's one of the houses on the end by the interstate. It's past the whites, that kind of thing. She didn't say that. The investigator is pinning her down on this. This again further supports the sensitivity indications we got earlier about this location. Okay, statement analysis does it, man. It finds it out earlier, even before he found it out. We were seeing this. The subject is psychologically distancing herself from this location, period. This is an important location and potentially important people, okay? So far, this is central. Okay. Other than the psychological distancing with the victims, I would say this right here so far. These are like 1 and 2. Like, here caveats this. Okay. Like one of the end houses. One of the end houses, even more information. However, one of is unspecific. Okay. So we're going to balance this out here. We also have some unspecificity. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to go with it. End houses give some more clarity. End houses, though, end house. It's an interesting way of explaining this. I am unsure as to how many end houses there are. Is this a cul-de-sac? I don't know how to explain it. Is further indication that this is sensitive to her. Okay. I am interpreting here. I'm just throwing out that option. I mean, she said, I don't know regarding the location time 3 times. Okay. Kind of getting a sense of exasperation here. Why? She said it 3 times, and yet she had more information to share. This is deceptive and uncooperative. This is not a good sign. Investigators should look closely at this location and the subject's activity surrounding this location and time. Okay. I'm going to scoot this down. All right, let's listen on. It's getting interesting.
Okay. And whose house is it that you went to?
It's, and I don't know their other roommate.
And okay. All right. So you're at this house. How long were you here?
Maybe like 40 minutes.
Okay.
And then I left by myself and went back to my house.
All right. So we're going to finish up here. All right. Okay. And whose house is it that you went to? It's my transcript said Kennedy Fitzgerald and Allie Benson. I do not know if that's true. Okay. It's in red for a reason. This was redacted. We heard it on the video. If this is wrong, I am sorry. I debated whether I should even include this. I kind of did because the redactions, it wasn't fully redacted where you could hear the first consonant and it did sound like a k, like a Kennedy. So I like that. But I'm just saying, please don't hold me to that. I'm not going to analyze a whole lot about that or anything. I'm just throwing it out there. And I don't know their other roommate. Analysis. Now the sergeant focuses on the who, which is good. It's a good that he's pinning her down here. We have another which indicates thinking, pausing, which indicates sensitivity. Okay. We have the name, maybe. The video is redacted here. The transcript I was given had these specific names. I cannot verify this. The transcript is true, and that's a big if. We're given an incomplete introduction earlier. Our other friends is how we were introduced before, and now she completes it with names, if that's true. Again, the sergeant's determination unearthed this, okay? But I cannot verify the accuracy of those names, but just thought I would mention them for those investigating the case. All right. I don't know their other roommate. This is slightly peculiar in that she doesn't specify whether she knows their name or not, but specifies that she doesn't know them. She doesn't specify anything else about them, but clearly she knows there is another roommate. The question we should ask is the only thing she knows about this person is that they are another roommate and that is it. She doesn't know them or doesn't know anything about them. Those are 2 different things. It might be one and the same, but 2 separate questions. You may not know someone, but you may know things about them. You may not know someone and you may not know anything about them, right? She says she doesn't know their other roommate. Does she know his or her name? Does she know their sex, male or female, their age, anything else? She doesn't offer it if she does. This other roommate may indicate the heart of the sensitivity that we've been observing from this location and time. Okay. We have another I don't know, right? And possibly Allie Kennedy. I don't know what she says here. Okay. All right. So you and we think Yessie, you're at the house. How long were you here? Would have been great if you would have asked what happened. Instead, it's how long you were here. Now, maybe like 40 minutes. He says K. And then I left by myself and went back to my house. All right. Analysis. Indicates thinking, a pause, which indicates sensitivity to the question. We have a caveated maybe like 40 minutes. Okay. The question was, how long was she there? How long were you there? She continues on, maybe like 40 minutes. Okay. She continues on and leaves, quote unquote, the location and continues sharing what happened afterwards, after she left. Underscoring sensitivity here, folks. And then denotes a passage of time, missing information before she left. She said maybe like 40 minutes, and then, so there's more, something more. He didn't ask what happened once. He didn't ask what happened once you got there. Again, she skipped this and didn't divulge anything that happened. This is again another indication of sensitivity regarding this location and time. I left denotes two things. She was now by herself. Okay, number one. Number two, I left denotes she was thinking about that place while she's explaining moving on, denoting sensitivity regarding this location. Okay, I went back home is economic. I left is unnecessary. That's why we pay attention to it. So I said I was going to talk a little bit more about this. To go from place A to place B, you must leave place A. It's impossible not to. Leaving place A is unnecessary. So mentioning that she's leaving is an indication that the leaving was sensitive for some reason. This indicates missing information. By myself is unnecessary. She adds that on there. I left explains that all by itself. Okay. Or I went back to my house. That tells you she was by herself. There's some reinforcement here though. Okay. And then I left by myself. There's reinforcement. Okay. Truth doesn't need reinforcement. Okay. There's some potential persuasion here. It brings up the question, did she leave by herself? Or is she trying to convince that she left by herself? The other possibility is that leaving by herself was sensitive to her. Okay, so we got to weigh what all could this mean? Was there a fight? Was there an issue? Was a friend supposed to come with her and went, that's why the leaving was sensitive to her? I left by myself. I'm upset, right? There's a few different things here, but we are getting sensitivity indications. We must think through this. And went back to my house. There could be a drop pronoun here. Okay. So this kind of supports our questioning. Okay. And went back to my house. All right. She said, I left by myself and went. Okay. She began with I and reinforced it and possibly dropped I or a we here. Okay. I left by myself and went back to my house. I left by myself and I went back to my house. Okay. So I left by myself and we went back to my house. There could be a drop pronoun here. Okay. It could be deception. I don't know. But I'm just, this may be an indication that she didn't leave by herself. This is something that investigators would hopefully look close at. Okay. There's some sensitivity here. We must consider, why is there some sensitivity? Why is there some reinforcement? Why is there some persuasion? All right. So that is the first part one of Bethany's interview. So the next part is going to be focused on when she gets back home. So this should be, part 2 should be awesome. So look out for it. Should come out here. I don't even want to say. Might be a while, but I'll try. I'm trying my best. I hope this helps clarify some things. I hope I made sense. I hope I didn't go too fast, go too slow. I hope you could see everything well. Yeah, let me know. I'd be curious if you would drop some comments on, is all the colors too much? Is there something else that I can do to help y'all track? I would love to hear some feedback on that. Okay. So I've tried a couple different things. Anyway, we're at almost 2 hours. So this is perfect. This is what I was hoping for. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Have a good day. Have a good night. And we'll see you later.